Welcome, everyone. This is Pat Bailey, Director of Training and Professional Development at Out and Equal Workplace Advocates. We welcome you to our 2017 Virtual Summit Series, some of the best workshops from our 2016 Out and Equal Workplace Summit. Today we're going to talk about reverse mentoring and inclusive business results. You should be hearing this now through your broadcast, through your computer, so either use your speakers or turn up the volume. If you have questions or problems, you can use the chat box on the left side and chat those in, and we'll be able to respond to you. Here's the sign-in information, and if you do happen to drop off early, because remember this call goes till 1:15, so it's about 75 minutes, we will have the session recorded, and you can go back and listen to that as well. A couple of announcements for upcoming information at Out and Equal. We're going to continue this virtual summit series. Next week we'll be talking about LGBTQ marketing, and then on the 28th of February about inclusive ERG. We have our monthly town call coming up talking about next generation leaders in the workplace. And then we're going to start a Building Bridges 101, one-hour course, high-level overview. It'll be a fee-for-service course. We're just getting ready to roll that out. The registration will be available up on the web shortly. The Executive Forum, which is for those emerging leaders in the workplace who identify as LGBT, is coming up the 27th to 29th here in San Francisco. At the end of that will be the Momentum Leadership Gala on the 29th. Town calls continuing into March on self-ID, and our full Building Bridges 201 course, three-part, happening April 3rd, 10th, and 17th. And then, of course, join us for the summit in 2017 in Philadelphia. So a couple of quick questions I've got for you as we get set up here. The first one is looking at our training program and trying to get some feedback from you as the audience about what are you looking for in your classroom, online, or facilitation consulting needs in 2017? What are the topics that are of interest to you? Right now we've got about 184 on the call, so be sure to click on the results and you'll see the chart come up, and it looks like we've got basic LGBT cultural competency, developing allies, gender identity are some of the top ones. We'll give everybody a few seconds here to kind of get back and answer those polls. If you have other topics, go ahead and chat those into the chat box. Just type and hit send on that, and we'll go with that. And it looks like we've got about half have responded so far. We'll give you just another couple of seconds to come back to that, respond to that poll. And then let's go ahead and go to our second poll then. Our second poll is, what's your role within your company? What is your job? What do you do? Are you executive, HR, D&I professional? Again, submit the results, and let's see who's in the audience. If you don't see your job listed there, you can go ahead and chat those in. And again, looks like we have overwhelming LGBT employees. We have about 20% ally employees. Thank you for calling in and joining us today. And about 40% are ERG, BRG members or leaders. So it looks like we've got just about two-thirds of everybody coming in on that. So let's try our third poll. What business sector are you in? So go ahead and select one of those that apply. You have aerospace, defense, security, banking, insurance, and non-banking as well. Health and pharma, legal, manufacturing, nonprofits, academic, public sector, government. I see some higher education coming in the chats. Telecom, utilities, energy, consulting, and other. Overwhelmingly, it looks like we've got about 33% of the audience is coming in banking and insurance. And again, we'll give everybody we're up to about 212 callers coming in. So I think we've got a pretty good sense of who's on the call. We welcome everybody. I see a lot of IT folks are coming in, and product organization, facility management. But I'm going to get us started now on the call, and I'm going to turn it over to Michaela on our call here to get started. And
great.
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Smith, and thanks so much for tuning in today. And on behalf of Eli Lilly and my fellow panelists, we are thrilled to be talking today about reverse mentoring. We did this workshop at Out and Equal, and we're so happy to be doing it again. And we're going to talk about how reverse mentoring can definitely help drive inclusion as well as enhance business results. So just a little bit about Lilly. It's a pharmaceutical company. We've just celebrated 140 years of being in business. We're global. We are headquartered in Indianapolis. And 3 of the 4 of us on the panel are field-based salespeople. And Pam is located in Indianapolis. So now we're going to just introduce ourselves, and we're going to start with Jeff.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. There you go.
Yes, I'm here. My name is Jeffrey Meyer, and I am an executive sales representative based out of New York City. Michaela and I work as co-chairs of the Lilly Field Pride Employee Resource Group, which is a field-based resource group for employees who are out in the field who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, as well as we're open to allies. And just a little bit about me, I've been involved with reverse mentoring for a while now, and I'm most excited about being involved with reverse mentoring because it gives us as LGBT employees an opportunity to really interact with our management and our senior management and give them sort of honest and open feedback about what it's like to be an LGBT person in the workplace in a safe environment so that we can learn from each other on how we can make our company a more inclusive and better place to be for all employees, as well as to drive business results through that. So I'm really excited to be presenting with my fellow panelists today.
Yep, my name is Lee Gervais. I'm a sales rep based out of Seattle, Washington. I have been involved in reverse mentoring again since its beginning a couple of years ago now. And part of the reason that I wanted to be involved was a little more personal because I came out late in life. I've only been out to my family and friends for 12 years, and at work only 5 or 6 years. So it's been a very short time that I've actually been totally out. And what this program has done is it's helped me personally to go through that process and to interact with our senior leaders and to help them understand more of where someone like me would be coming out at work in a little different situation, a little maybe different way that somebody might come out to their supervisor. So to me, it's been one of the learning process on my end as well as to interact with our senior leaders, and I'm very excited about being part of this whole program.
Hi, my name is Pam Elmore, and I lead the sales and marketing capabilities at Lilly. And I identify myself as lesbian, and I would like to share a little bit more of my coming out story with you today as to why I got involved so excitedly in the reverse mentoring program. As we know, every day it seems like we come out, and I started working at Lilly back in 2001. I showed up to work one day, what was very conservative at that time, about 16 years ago, with a wedding ring. I walked into my area with very high cubicle walls and so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Within the first few hours, no one said a word. And then eventually, someone finally spoke to me. And the question was, are you married? What's your husband's name and how many children do you have? I nervously responded, my partner's name is Walker. And what they did not know is that it was not the Texas Ranger variety because it was Susan Walker, my wife. About 16 years ago, minus 1 week, I knew I'd made a mistake. I didn't know where I was going to go from here. 16 years minus 2 weeks, I unexpectedly had to come out at Lilly to my supervisor. My mother-in-law had a heart attack, and I needed to go be with my not-so-legal Indiana wife and our family. How was I ever going to explain this to my new boss? I was married, it wasn't legal, Walker is really Susan, and now I needed to get in my car and drive to Connersville, Indiana, to a hospital. I was scared to death walking down that hallway. It seemed like a mile to our office. I'm sure I walked in with fright on my face and said, I have a wife. I know you don't have it documented, but her name is Susan. We're not legally married, and my mother-in-law just had a heart attack, and I'm shaking, and I'm staring at her. And she looked up from her desk, and she said, Pam, can you implement training? And she just stared at me and waited for an answer. And I said, well, yes, that's what you hired me to do. She goes, then what are you doing here? She goes, get in your car and get to the hospital, and please keep me posted. She has no idea on that day what retention play that she just made. And from that day forward, I was comfortable in my own skin, bringing my whole self to work. And when this reverse mentoring program came along, and Michaela and Jeff got me involved, it was like after that day back in 2001, I said, this is what I need to do to be part of this program, because leadership does set the tone, and the reverse mentoring created a safe environment that allowed me to be vulnerable. And so I was able to deepen my personal experiences and influence that tone and help say to those leaders and executives what some of their direct reports may be afraid to say. So being able to set that example and create that safe environment for others and pave that way is why I'm involved in such an exciting program. And so excited to be part of this today with the panelists.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Cool. And so this is Michaela, and my story is, as Jeff indicated, Jeff and I are the chairs of the Field Pride LGBTQ program here at Lilly, and we developed this reverse mentoring program also. And when I started with Lilly 16 years ago, I decided I was going to be out from day one. And I just said, hey, listen, if I can't be out, then I'm not going to stay at this company. So luckily, 16 years later, I'm still with the company. And I felt that it was worth the professional risk so I could do my small part in continuing to make headway for the LGBTQ community here at Lilly. So that's my story. And we thought that it makes sense for the next hour and a half to kind of give people an expectation of what to expect. We are going to talk about the 3 objectives we hope that we can go over. We want to show you a short video about what reverse mentoring can look like. We want to then go through slides. Jeff and I will alternate between slides and talk about the details of reverse mentoring. We're going to stop several times for Q&A, and we really hope that this can be interactive, so please chat your questions in all along the way. So the 3 objectives we want to cover are: how does reverse mentoring work and why are we doing it? Secondly, discuss key learnings from the reverse mentoring program. And then lastly, we want to share how you can bring this idea back to your organization or your company should you decide that that's something you want to do. So let's take a look at the video.
My name is Pam Elmore, and I am the Director of Customer Experience Learning Center for Global Sales and Marketing.
I'm Wei-Li Xiao, Vice President of Sales and Operations for Lilly USA. Our reverse mentoring relationship, Pam, I think has been going on for about 3 months.
3 months, yeah. And we started pretty quick into some pretty deep discussions.
You know, in my line of work, I mentor a lot of people, but to be mentored was really gratifying because somebody else kind of took control and said, hey, listen, you know, Wei-Li, what do you think about this and what do you think about that?
You know, I came in sometimes with a little bit of skepticism about how genuine is this experience really going to be, and is it a check-the-box activity? And I was pleasantly surprised. Wei-Li is serious, and it made me all that more invested to help him learn and grow and be informed to make the right type of influence and culture impact in our environment.
Like in a lot of our jobs, one of our biggest responsibilities is creating these environments for our people so they feel like they can succeed. And so if you want to create these environments, you've got to understand the people that work in them. So to understand that, so you're not always walking on eggshells and you're not always, you know, scared of what you're going to say because maybe you're not as knowledgeable, this kind of reverse mentoring situation or setup allows you to really understand, get comfortable so that you can connect with everybody in your organization and then really create that environment where people feel like they can achieve, bring their whole self to work, and just be happy with what they do.
I've learned that Lilly is the right place to work. The passion that you bring to our mentoring relationship and the trust that he's investing as a leader to try to learn so he can grow and influence and change the culture has really been a huge value to me. It's also reminded me that I've been fortunate. In my area, I'm very supported through leadership. My colleagues, my friends, my family have all accepted and understood my lifestyle and embrace it. And it reminds me that there's a lot of people out here that don't have disassociated from their families. They're not comfortable coming out. So it's raised my commitment to try to help those people feel safe to come out in their work environment.
Hey, Pam.
Hi.
Hey, you look You look good today. Nice colors.
Hey, thanks. I like yours too.
Yeah. See, our relationship is so close. We're even color coordinated.
That is such a great video. I've watched it at least a dozen times, and each time I see it, I say, wow, that is kind of what we're striving for between the mentor and the mentee. So what is reverse mentoring, and why are we doing it here at Lilly? Well, Field Pride, which is the LGBTQ employee resource group, we wanted to really help foster or continue to foster inclusion and help our Lilly leaders with questions that they may have or any topics that they want to explore regarding the LGBTQ community. So we kicked this program off in June of 2014. We made the pilot coincide with June Pride Month, and we are now completing wave 3. So we could have done mentoring the traditional way, but we decided that really what we needed to do is make the environment more inclusive for our community. And a couple of reasons why we decided reverse mentoring would be helpful. We had heard from some folks were completely out, some folks weren't so comfortable being out, or some were partially out, and we all know how exhausting that can be if you're not able to be who you truly are and not be authentic at work. Secondly, research shows, and we all believe, and those of us who have experienced it personally, that when you're not able to be authentic or your true self at work, then you're not as engaged, you're not as productive. So by fostering a more inclusive atmosphere, everyone wins. The employee wins, the company wins. And while we're focused in reverse mentoring on the LGBTQ employees, our hope is that this transcends to all employees so that everyone can feel that they can be truly who they are at work. And lastly, Field Pride, while we are a support network, we really wanted to show the company that we can impact business results. So with very little financial investment, the company can really reap significant benefits from a program like this. You know, a quick example, a Lilly leader who went through this mentoring program, he was sharing with us that he was actually sharing with his mentors that he wasn't connecting with somebody on his team. And through the mentors, they encouraged him to discuss that he's in this reverse mentoring program. And he did at one of the meetings. And a week later, when he was with one of his field-based sales representatives, that person came out to him. And they had worked together for over a year. So until the manager really showed that he was truly inclusive and really wanted to foster that kind of environment, that employee didn't come out until the manager shared he was involved in the reverse mentoring program. So it made a world of difference for the entire team and specifically the manager and the employee. So next slide. So what is reverse mentoring? We wanted to create a symbiotic relationship. We want to cultivate and develop relationships with senior leaders, middle management, and really help them understand the LGBTQ employee journey. Initially, we really wanted to we still want to reach all the managers, as many as possible, but we really had to focus in on the VP level and senior director level so that they could see and experience firsthand the value of this program. And then they could endorse it and help us promote it to middle management. And the goal is to really continue to foster a very deep relationship between the mentees and mentors. An example of how getting VPs involved up front is one VP during the pilot program jumped in and he had such an amazing experience. He shared with his team of directors how much he got from the experience, and all 4 of his direct reports volunteered to be in the next wave of mentoring. Next slide, please.
Yep.
All right, and this is Pat. I'm going to jump back in, and we have another poll. So does your company have mentoring or reverse mentoring program? You have some choices here of yes, we have both, yes, mentoring only, yes, reverse mentoring only, no, but adding it soon, but adding both soon, no plans to add them, not sure, not applicable, or other. Go ahead and chat in your answers. We're getting a few questions that are coming in as well, so please do keep chatting those in. It looks like that we've got about a third of the companies that have called in. We're up to 263 on the call have mentoring only. We've got about 25% not sure, and looks like we're getting some good numbers in there, and about 16% on the call have both. We've got about 2/3 of the group in, and it looks like we've got some comments coming in. They've got a mentoring program, but not LGBT related, and they have informal mentoring only. So with that, I'll go ahead and click that to the next slide then, and thanks for that.
Yeah, and I was just going to make a few comments about both the traditional mentoring and reverse mentoring. This is Jeff again. At our company, we started off with having many traditional mentoring programs. We were, I was assigned a mentor very early on in my career at Lilly, and one of the reasons that we went with the reverse mentoring idea specifically for LGBT individuals is that we were noticing that a lot of times, because there are very few out people necessarily, and we wanted to change that. So we wanted to make a more inclusive environment where people could open up more, be more open with their managers. But how do you do that at a large company when you're spread out across multiple states, different time zones, when you might not necessarily even know if your boss might be comfortable with, he might not have had many, or he or she might not have had many interactions with gay or lesbian people. So the way that we do reverse mentoring is having a gay and lesbian person, or 2 people basically mentor the senior leader rather than the traditional mentoring route. And we found that helpful because we also chose to have mentors. The slide that we just looked at was talking about how it's a safe environment. We also chose to have mentors that are not going to be someone that you're reporting to. So you're going to have, we picked and paired our mentors and mentees, someone that would not be someone who would be your boss or your boss's boss, that you could have a candid conversation with them and they could have a candid conversation with you. And sometimes this was, in a few cases with our mentoring, this was the most a manager or a senior director had gotten to really interact one-on-one with a gay or lesbian employee, because we don't always get to have a chance to have these talks in the workplace. So that's how we sort of created the program, and why we developed it is in a reverse mentoring way. For those of you who don't have reverse mentoring yet at your companies, we are sort of strongly encouraging to rethink the way mentoring is done, specifically from the LGBT perspective, because we have a lot that we can provide in terms of our talents for the gay and lesbian, for the gay and lesbian people who are our coworkers, as well as to help to educate and teach our managers and our director level and senior management what it's like to be a gay or lesbian person at your company, and each person's experience is going to be different. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Michaela, I believe, for the next 2 slides.
Okay.
So
next slide.
So we went back. Here, I clicked it forward. So we're at how does reverse mentoring work?
Okay. I think you just did that slide.
And
okay, so here is how does it work. So we, the mentors, get together and we decide about pre-work. And it's really fun giving vice presidents pre-work. It's usually the other way around, so it's really fun when we can have the opportunity to give them pre-work. So we decide what it is that we want to get accomplished, and we follow up as mentors, and we send that pre-work, via email or whatever communication method is best for that mentee to make sure that we're prepared for the next time. And then we really try to focus in on a confidential kind of environment and a trusting environment so that the mentees feel very comfortable with the mentors to talk about or ask any kind of questions in a respectful and professional manner. And we're going to get into some specific details about what pre-work looks like and what some of the ideas are like, but a couple of quick examples could be something like tell people you're in this reverse mentoring initiative and tell them why you wanted to do it and what's it all about. And another example is to go to the Human Rights Campaign website and maybe just read trending articles to see what is happening and keep themselves apprised of that. And then I think we are going to do a poll. Okay, and then again, we are really focused in on a safe and confidential environment. And we believe in telling personal stories because we found that those personal stories are very powerful when the mentees hear the LGBTQ journeys. We encourage, again, questions in a respectful and sincere way. And we mentors have monthly calls where we can kind of brainstorm with one another in terms of what's working, if we're having stumbling blocks, or, how do we push our mentees to do more? How do we make sure that after our relationship, it's not just forgotten, this reverse mentoring initiative, but they truly incorporate it into their business plan, into if their direct reports. And we do that, again, in a very confidential manner. We never mention who our mentees are. We may just simply say something like, I have a mentee who's very much into diversity and inclusion and really wants to be challenged more. What ideas do folks have? So that's the kind of brainstorming that we do to make sure that we're utilizing everybody who is a mentor and really providing a great experience for the mentees. And we try to keep building from one experience to the other to make sure that what the mentee wants to get out of the relationship, they're truly getting out of the relationship. And then we just wanted to stop there and open it up for Q&A.
Great, Michaela. We've got some questions that have come in. One came, what was your leadership team that participated in the reverse mentoring program strictly on a volunteer basis? And then how did you get their buy-in to the program? Because they're busy, and how do you get them to commit?
Okay, I will take a stab at it, and anyone else can jump in after me. Well, initially, I would say that our executive sponsor for our ERG was instrumental in getting some of the VPs started in the beginning. And so we really focused on the vice president level, and kind of in our minds, the steps would be vice presidents, directors, senior directors, and then middle management. And that was where we really ultimately want to get to, is middle management, because they're the folks that really drive engagement and really set the tone of the culture for a team. But we had to get VP buy-in. So again, the executive sponsor really helped us get some of the VPs involved. And what was really interesting is the folks that were really committed to it, they have stayed involved in some way. They have either written articles in newsletters in different business units, or they continue to demonstrate that they are committed to a more inclusive environment, both for LGBTQ or other groups of people as well. And those that maybe were not so bought in, they have kind of fallen a little bit more to the wayside. So I hope that answers the question.
That sounds great. Any other thoughts from the rest of the group?
I would just add that as Michaela said, we really went with a top-down approach. We started up as high as we could because we needed to get the buy-in from as senior level people as we could, and then they ended up recruiting more mentees in the program. And once people went through the program, that generated a lot of interest. And after the first time we did it, I mean, we really leveraged the executive sponsor to get the first round, but once the cat was out of the bag and people had done it, and they had enjoyed the experience so much that they were recommending it to all of their, you would get a vice president, and then he would say, I want all of my direct reports to go through this program. Can we put them on the list? So then we had to really struggle to make sure that we had enough mentors, because what we did to find the mentors was we went through our ERG mailing list and asked everyone who might be interested in being a mentor, would they be interested in being a mentor? And then we tried to pair people up cross-business unit, and we also tried to pair up so it wouldn't be necessarily two gay people. It would be a gay person and a lesbian person, or a transgender person and a lesbian person. So we had two different perspectives from two different areas, both mentoring the same management or senior management.
Great, sounds good. Another question came in about, can you talk about what helped mentees get the most out of the relationship? Is it going in with a specific question they want to solve? Kind of how did you set that up as they walked into the relationship?
I can field this one. What we tried to do when we started off the program was we had people, when they first signed up, their mentors would reach out to them and say, what do you most want to learn, or is there something specific about the LGBT consumer or the patient population that we're talking about, or the healthcare providers or your employees? Is there something specific that you're looking to gain from this experience? And we also tried to sort of suss out where they were on the spectrum on the learning curve with LGBT issues, both internally and externally, to sort of see, is this someone who had a lot of experience with LGBT diversity and inclusion coming into it, or is it someone who really had a lot to learn going into it? And then we tried to sort of each mentor-mentee relationship, we tried to guide them along the way so that everyone got what they wanted to. And sometimes the objectives would change halfway through the process, and they would have other things that they would want to learn about. And then what we ended up doing was having mentor calls about once every 6 weeks. We'll talk about this in a second with the timeline, to check in with the other mentors and see how our mentees were progressing through the program as it was going along.
And who kind of runs that program? Is it the ERG or HR or D&I? Who's kind of running the program?
We do. The LGBTQ Employee Resource Group runs it.
Excellent.
So, yes. And I will just add one other thing about, I think what Jeff was saying is totally spot on in terms of if somebody really has a specific request, those folks seem, in my experience, really seem to benefit a lot from the program. Also, what happened is the relationship between the mentors and the mentee often morphed. So maybe the mentee would start asking us opinions on other inclusion priorities, or running different scenarios by us. So, which was really cool and unique, because they then kind of looked at us more as a resource and not just one-dimensional, but kind of how do we really include everybody? How do we really make this a very inclusive environment? So that was really interesting also, how in some cases folks just kind of used us as a sounding board and on other topics as well.
Sounds good.
Okay,
there was a question. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go on, Pat.
Yeah, I was going to say there was another question about the orientation for the mentors to help them guide the relationship, and kind of how do they get, once they get selected, how do they kind of get started in the program?
A couple of things. One, when Jeff and I are matching different people, we try to pair an experienced mentor up with somebody who may not be experienced, and then we have monthly calls where all the mentors get together and we brainstorm. And so we kind of leverage one another. We do kind of want to make something more formal going forward, where maybe we have one person who really does help train the new people. But but again, we did a pilot and we've done 2 waves. So we're trying to get better each and every time, and we do surveys, and then people kind of recommend, oh, we could do this, maybe we ought to expand this aspect, or let's change this. So after each survey, we try to incorporate and make the program better.
Sounds good. I think some of the other questions you're going to kind of get to as we go through. So if we want to continue with the timeline, that might answer some of these other questions.
Cool.
Sure thing.
Okay, so this is my,
okay.
Oh, we have to go back one slide, Pat. Okay, perfect. So this is just logistics before we get into the timeline. And initially when we did the pilot phase, we did an 8-month period, and we asked for at least 4 touch points. It could be some people did more. Some of the mentees wanted more touch points, but we asked everybody when we sent out an email to the mentees saying, these are going to be your mentors. Please commit to 4 touch points over this length of time. And as I indicated, it was 8 months at first, and now we've shortened it to make it a little bit, to really actually get 2 waves in, or 2 mentoring sessions in per year. So that was a change that we got through survey feedback. And then because we are a decentralized structure, most of the touch points do occur over conference calls. Ideally, we'd love to have face-to-face meetings. And in some cases that has happened. I've been part of one where we were face-to-face with the mentee, and then someone was Skyping in, or some people Skype in, but typically, again, because we're a decentralized structure, it is all over the phone.
So next we have the timeline slide, which I'm clicking to right now. So this is a brief example of how we scheduled each wave. So as you can see on the top, we started off with people volunteer to be in the program, and we kind of had a waiting list. We started off small, which made it easier to do the pairings. We only really started off with about 5 or 6 people in the first pilot, and then it grew. We also capped the capacity at about 15 people. We don't want to have so many mentoring relationships going on at the same time that the program becomes too unmanageable, because we're doing this all through our own volunteer time. So we first had people volunteer for it, then we paired them together. As Michaela mentioned, she and I sort of worked together to try to do the pairings. As the program grows, the pairing is becoming a little bit more official, in that we try to now, as Michaela said, rotate people. If they've already done a mentoring relationship, put them with someone who hasn't yet. We're in constant recruiting mode. I noticed we got some questions about how do you find enough mentors. We're always sort of looking for new people to join and adding to that. Then during the time after that, we schedule the meetings. The meetings happen, as Michaela said, every 4 to 6 weeks during our program, which ended up being about a 6-month wave, 6 to 9 months when you add the prep time and the recap follow-up time. And then once the meetings conclude, we send out a survey at the end to help keep us accountable. And the survey has questions like, what did you learn from the relationship? Did you get what you want out of it? And the surveys go out both to the mentors and the mentees. So again, at the bottom it says, due to limited space, if a mentee is unable to really commit to the scheduled calls, that mentee really needs to tell he or her mentors they can be removed. When we first started, sometimes people were getting assigned to be mentored in the relationship, and then maybe they would have a change of job title, or maybe they wouldn't be in a capacity where they could do it. So we made sure that at the onset, if they weren't going to be able to really commit to those scheduled meetings over the course of the 6 months, to open up that spot for someone else. So that's sort of a little bit of our timeline. And then the next slide is some of the pre-work. We mentioned a little bit before about the opportunity to give someone who's a vice president pre-work. And over the years, we've been doing this for several years, we've come up with some pre-work, everything from pretty basic LGBT inclusion stuff to some much more detailed, depending on the person's need. So this is a list of our pre-work, but I'm going to turn it over right now to I'm going to turn it right over now to Pam to talk about one of the pre-work assignments that she did with one of her mentees.
Thank you, Jeff. So this is an example of one of my mentees that was very progressive when they started the program. And so we tried to really come up with ideas to really stretch the experience. And so this is an example of one of our final meetings. I believe it was meeting number 4. And so we asked the mentee to reflect on the goals they identified at the beginning of the program. And then we asked for them to stretch their exploration, and we provided more videos, the ones that were previously not shared, or maybe articles to read, along the lines of something that would really push their comfort a little bit, versus some of the more basic ones that we started in the beginning. And then we would include action items, and Michaela mentioned a few of these earlier, and we would ask them to share their engagement with reverse mentoring, to say the words gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender when they're in groups with other leaders, as well as their teams, their employees, in social environments. And then how can they incorporate reverse mentoring or diversity and inclusion objectives into the performance management plan and try to reward those behaviors during the wrap-up discussions. And then last, we asked them to think about their own personal action plan and goals. And so that would incorporate some of these things, like I mentioned above, about performance management and rewards, but really personalizing it for them. And so holding them accountable to the homework and to come back and be prepared for the next meeting was very helpful. We would even say certain things like, along with this video, please capture your key takeaway as it relates to X, Y, or Z that we identified from the goals that they shared at the initial meeting that we had. And we've just found this type of being prepared and organized and challenging them to come back and do this and come back and be prepared really made them accountable, and they were very excited to be able to do that and learn more as they go back to their teams and share.
Thank you, Pam.
You're
the
welcome.
next slide is, and the next slide, here we go, is prior to the first meeting. Now we're both clicking. There we go, that one. We just try. It's important to stay organized before you start a mentoring relationship. And one of the things we try to do is make sure that one person, because we have 2 mentors for every mentee, to coordinate with the mentors to decide who's really going to sort of take the communication lead with the vice president before, or the senior management before you start working with them. And then we encourage people because, again, we're spread out across the country. A lot of times face-to-face meetings weren't possible for, especially the beginning. Maybe you only would get 1 or 2 face-to-face meetings, not a bunch of face-to-face meetings. So we would help the mentors craft a just sort of draft email that includes the best way to contact them and to have a good communication strategy tailored to the needs of the mentee, because every manager, director, vice president, they all sort of want to be communicated with differently. Some are great with text, some are great through their administrative assistants, some just want to do emails. So we try to make sure that we tailor the mentoring relationship to the needs of the mentee. And we also sometimes, because, again, we're spread out across the country, the mentoring meetings sometimes would happen most frequently were really happening by a phone, but we also have at times used the iPad and FaceTime to do the mentoring relationships, and we've also tried to, when we have the possibility to meet up with the mentee face-to-face. So prior to the first meeting, again, get your ducks in line, get everything organized, because we want to make sure we're being sensitive to everyone's time. As I mentioned, you want to really determine the schedule and timing of the meetings according to the mentee's schedule, and we encourage and foster a lot of communication between the co-mentors prior to the first meeting, so that when, one of the best practice that we did was we made sure that the mentors knew each other's story before they started with the mentee. And sometimes learning your coworker in another part of the country, or someone who, I myself identify as gay, but me learning someone who's a transgender person's story, or a lesbian person's story in the workplace, or someone who I came out early in my career, someone who was coming out later, that helped me be a better mentor along the way. So we really encourage to learn the person's story that you're mentoring with before you work with the mentee. And then Before we did the first meeting, we did usually send out one simple aspect of pre-work to get them sort of to set the tone. And one of the examples that we have later on that if we have time we'll play is a video called "Coming Out Everyone Has a Closet" by Ash Beckham, and talking about all the different types of closets that people can have. And that we found that was a very good, simple way to set the tone for as the pre-work for the meeting. Again, pre-work was usually just a short video, maybe a little homework assignment before the mentoring relationship. So with that, I'm going to change to the next slide, which is possible discussion points.
Okay. So basically, these are just some ideas to get the relationship going. So it's really important since we're starting to build the relationship. This is when you've communicated with the mentee, you and the mentor are kind of saying, okay, let's ask some questions of the mentee. Let's get this relationship going so we can really make some headway. So a starting point is basically just understanding the mentee's story. What's their personal story? What's their professional story? We want to know, why are they getting involved in this mentoring program? Is this something that have they been voluntold, or are they really into it? Is there a family member who's LGBTQ? Is there, their child, their customer, a teammate? What's going on? What is the motivation behind it? And as you go through these questions, you can then really understand who the mentee is, and you can really then start to customize a strategy so that we, as the mentors, can really deliver a meaningful mentoring experience with the mentee. And I think that Lee is going to give us an example of something that he'd like to share.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Somebody had asked earlier about how does the mentor get trained on how to be a mentor, and Jeff and Michaela put this together at the beginning, kind of a playbook is what I call it, that was extremely valuable to us as mentors on how to structure these conversations. And a lot of these ideas that you see here, you can incorporate in the first discussion when you tell the mentee your story. And then you want to ask the mentee back, what's their story? So everybody has a story. And then, to me, that's the most powerful part of the conversation, is right up front, because that does then give you guidance and ideas on where to go next. And in every case, there's always been somebody discovers something within themselves that they didn't really realize was that big of a deal. They had an unconscious bias that they didn't realize was that big. And one of the most recent ones, a director that I was mentoring just recently, made a comment at the end. He said that the discussion and the tools that we used, like all those videos and everything you saw that Pam presented, the questions that we asked, the exercises we had them do, made him think from a totally different perspective about his LGBT employees. And what he did then is he went to one that had come out to him previously, and he supplemented his discussion, or his development is what I call it, through this program by supplementing it with discussions with that employee. So it made it even richer. It made it even a bigger success to him. And it's allowed him then to be more open to bring up some things within discussions within his employee group to make sure they understand that he is very inclusive and that that's what he really grasps on. So I think the key thing to putting together all these, the individual plans, is to make sure that they understand it's confidential, safe environment, and that you develop that strong trust right up at the very beginning. And I really believe that face-to-face is the way to do that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Great. So I'll advance to the next slide here. Okay. So the next is, these are a couple ideas that we have worked with over the years. One that we really like, a possible discussion point with the mentee, is to have them just try for a week, and then we put this in the pre-work or in between meetings. Try to go for either a day or a week not referencing their personal lives or referring to their significant other as my spouse or partner, rather than saying my wife or my husband, just to give people, the mentees, just a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to not talk about your personal life at work, or to use the non-gender specific pronouns, as many of us do before we come out at work. And then we talk about a little bit what that's like, carrying that around with you as an employee when you can't truly be yourself at work. And we've tried to really ask the mentees, do you see how this might impact people's business results? If the entire time you're carrying the weight of maybe not being your true self, or not feeling comfortable being your true self at work, what is the business impact of that? The idea with the mentoring and mentee discussion points is that as the meetings progress, they get a little bit more. They get even more personal, and they get deeper, and they get more challenging as you go along. You start off with the basics, your story, but then as you get into the third or fourth wave, you start to really talk to those leaders about, are they really doing all they can to create an inclusive work environment? Do they really understand the needs of gay and lesbian people that are working for them, and how can they be better at letting people be their true selves at work in order so that everyone can do their best work? So that's sort of a question about how can authenticity and engagement lead to better business results. And then another thing that we tried to talk with the mentee is, what is one change that they can make in the future so that all of your employees, including LGBT employees, can be authentic and engaged at work? And how can we as mentors help them? One example was the gentleman that I mentored last time around with Pam. He developed his own little action plan of how he wanted to make his area more inclusive and more diverse. And he wrote it down, and he put it actually as part of his performance management, and he shared it with his own supervisor so that he could himself be accountable to make some change. And one basic change is we just said, whenever possible, use the terms gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender when you're at meetings and when you're around other people, so that employees, if they aren't yet out at work, know that at least you're comfortable with the terminology. And also we tell people who are mentees to make sure that they talk about being involved in the mentoring program, and specifically reference their mentors on a regular basis as people that they are collaborating with, so that other employees know that this manager has at least worked with gay, lesbian people, has had conversations with them, understands a little bit of the needs to help create a more inclusive environment. So I'll click it over for the next slide is mentors, possible discussion points. And do you want to take this one, Michaela?
Sure, I'd love to. So we mentors, it's really important for us to tell our stories, and the political, the personal is the political. So we do, as Jeff indicated, as you kind of get more comfortable with one another, you're more free to share stories. And again, the confidentiality and trust are really important. So we do share things on the calls with our mentees, and the mentees share things back with us that are really important to establish trust and to really understand one another. So that's, I think that we've all personally found that when we are kind of vulnerable and we do share our stories with our mentees, it's incredibly powerful and moving, and that's when the relationship really goes to a higher level. And then we just ask folks about we mentors just like to tell about any kind of impacts that we've had, be them positive or negative, being LGBT at work or personally, and maybe how could we have changed that situation, or how would we have handled it differently. And then, so these are just a few examples. In the guidebook that Lee referenced, we have many others, but we just kind of took the highlights here. And we can continue to add as well. And then, like the last bullet point here, has there ever been a time where, you being authentic with your customer or with a colleague, did that really help connect with that coworker? So we talk about what the situation was, or conversely, if self-identifying didn't help, what was the situation? So again, discussion points. And the next slide.
Michaela, it's Pam. I think we wanted to ask the audience. I see one person shared about their ally experience of changing the gender pronoun. We were going to ask the audience if they have any other ideas that's worked well for them in the past to share that in the chat box, because we'd be interested in exploring those more as well.
Perfect.
And something else that we did, I noticed a question about people who don't have a spouse or partner. One of the things that we did was if the management or senior management had like a cubicle with maybe just any pictures of their personal life, to try taking those down for a week to see what that felt like, to just not have anything personal associated with you. Because oftentimes if you can't be out as a gay or lesbian, you often aren't sharing parts of your personal life, and we wanted our management to sort of understand and experience what that might be like. So that's to answer that question. If someone didn't have a spouse or partner, another way that we could really try to connect and help. Anytime we can really get the mentee to step into the shoes of the mentor, we found that's sort of helpful. And the more open and honest and authentic you can be, has helped.
Mm-hmm. And we just put this quote up on the slide because we really want to reinforce with our mentees, because they are leaders, that you really have to be intentional and deliberate, and you really need to do that in an inclusive way. So it's just a quote that we really like, and we usually have a little dialogue around that. So moving to the next slide. And then at the end of the mentoring relationship, what we hope is that it's not one and done, that we do have an ongoing relationship. And we ask the mentee, how do you want to structure that? Do we want to do it on a quarterly basis? Do we want to check in on a quarterly basis? Is it more of a twice-a-year basis? Or would you like to use this as a as-needed basis? And there's a variety. My current mentee wants to, keep the relationship going, so we're going to be talking every quarter. Other people do it as needed basis, but again, you want to have that conversation, and you want to decide as mentors and mentee, how do you see that going forward? And then, of course, we always want to debrief with our co-mentor and figure out what really went well. Where were the struggles? How can we make it work better next time? And we also want to try to capture success stories, like if a mentee sends us a quote or sends us an experience or an example of something that, because of the reverse mentoring initiative, that mentee incorporated it. We love to capture those stories, and we really recommend and encourage them to do so. And then, as we mentioned a couple of times during this presentation, we like to do surveys and get better from those surveys. We did talk about, the next slide is the Ash Beckham video. Since we're running out of time, it's almost 3 o'clock, and we want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. This is an amazing video. When we have shown it unanimously, our mentees have just remarked on how amazing it is. And it really opens up a lot of dialogue, and they can relate. Mentees can relate, especially if, they're straight and they're not used to maybe feeling like an outsider at times. They really remark that this shows that we all have something that maybe we're less apt to share, and it's a really great common bond.
There's a lot of great information, and this is Pat. We do have a lot of questions, and let me kind of focus it on kind of the mentor and the mentee a little bit. So there has been quite a few questions about how exactly do you identify the mentors? You've got junior staff. Are they LGBTQ? Do you have allies who could also mentor? And then talk a little bit about how do you gather that information about them to go into the matching process.
Okay, so initially that was a challenge when we started the pilot phase, but those of us who are out, we kind of rallied and got together, and as Jeff indicated earlier, it wasn't that many mentors. I think the pilot phase we had maybe 7 mentees, and we had maybe 10 mentors, and we did double duty because, again, we try to pair a male and a female with a mentee so that people can get different perspectives. So we kind of did it word of mouth. We, if I was talking to someone in a different business unit, I would be sharing about reverse mentoring and just asking if they know any LGBTQ people who are interested, tell them to email Jeff or myself. So it was very much grassroots, word of mouth, spreading the word, and then at each phase when communication was disseminated and people heard about reverse mentoring, more and more people who are LGBTQ would come to us and say, hey, count me in. And one other thing, we kind of expanded. The employee resource group is really field-based, but we also have a corporate-based employee resource group for Pride, and we've been utilizing folks like Pam, who's in corporate headquarters as well. So we've been kind of trying to get the field-based people, but we also use folks at corporate as well.
Great, that sounds good. What about the metrics? Jeff, you mentioned that you do a survey after. What are you finding is the feedback you're getting both from mentors and mentees?
I would say on a whole, the feedback has been positive. We can always have stuff that we can learn, and we always want to learn from our challenges as well as our strengths. We originally found that it was much more helpful if we got them, as Michaela mentioned earlier, to really get the mentors aligned with each other, as well as talking amongst ourselves as mentors going into it, so that we were providing a cohesive message. I know my personal experiences, the first time I mentored, I was a little all over the place and maybe wasn't as focused as I could have been throughout the process. So as we've gone through the program, we've set more specific objectives. A couple of the questions that are just asked in the survey, we like to keep it brief because that's the way to get people to fill out surveys if there's only a couple questions. And it's basically, would you recommend this program to a coworker? Did you get what you wanted out of the program? What would you change if you could? And in general, I would say overwhelmingly people would recommend it to coworkers, and they would go through it again, and they got what they learned. And we did have some people ask, my last mentor, for example, asked Pam and I, he was like, what can we do more than the normal amount of meetings? Can we do more than our 4 meetings? And we said absolutely, because he was getting so much out of it. The idea is that this is just a baseline jumping off point. And once you establish a relationship with that leader, that mentoring relationship can continue more informally. So we try to emphasize that as well. And then we also survey the mentors because, having folks do double duty and mentor more than one person, and year after year doing this, there's a chance of burnout with the mentors. So we try to make sure that we keep our mentors engaged, that we make the experience rewarding and gratifying for not just the mentees, but also for the LGBTQ folks who are being mentors.
Great, sounds good. How did you actually get the program started? What did it take? Well, you had the idea, and then what did it take to kind of get it through? It sounds like you used your executive sponsor for some of that, but what were the steps you had to go through to make this happen?
Well, I would echo that our executive sponsor at the time was instrumental. So basically, Jeff and I just kind of brainstormed and said, okay, what do we want this to look like? Who do we want to focus in on? Who, again, the VPs, we really focused in on them primarily because we needed their buy-in. And when a VP says, I believe in this, then people listen. So we kind of just, between the two of us, came up with, okay, how do we think this should look? And then we rolled it out to our executive sponsor, and she said, I'm on. She sent out an email, and we got responses, and then we just took it from there. So the pilot was very much a pilot. It was very much a learning experience. But folks, we did a survey, and folks really got a lot from it. Does that answer your question?
That does. Was there any HR involvement, or did D&I get involved in terms of once you got past the pilot? Are they involved in getting the word out?
They are now, yes. So we did the pilot phase, and then we just completed, wave 3. So yes, they really like the program, and it has been modeled in other business units and other ERGs, and it's actually now moving over to Europe. There's a version of it in Europe, and other ERGs may take it if they're the African American ERG has taken it and kind of morphed it a little bit and made it their own, but there are a lot of employee resource groups and other business groups that are modeling something after that, after our program. And so our Global Diversity and Inclusion Office is aware of that and is kind of getting the word out and trying to connect people, connect those folks with us to kind of learn from our key learnings.
And is there any thoughts to kind of tying this into a mandatory training for a VP level, or more even taking it down to mid-level managers, maybe peer mentoring kind of things?
Jeff, you want to field that one?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We found that this program tends to work best when people really want to do it, rather than when they're being told to do it. That being said, it would be great in theory to have it be so everyone would want to do it. As of right now, we haven't talked about making it a mandatory thing. We find that it's better to entice people with the idea that, oh, your boss did this and your coworkers, everyone else on your team already went through this mentoring program and they're all talking about it. So then people sort of feel like they want to join because they feel like they're being left out if they haven't. We didn't want to make it something mandatory because then you tend to get the people who are doing it just because they have to. And I don't necessarily personally think that that's going to drive the best results. I'd rather work with someone who really wants to learn, because then it's wasting resources for the mentors if we only have a certain number of mentors, and we really want to only be actively working with the people who want to do it. It's mostly limited capacity. I mean, if we had unlimited amounts of diverse gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer people who were in our employee resource group, then we could probably do much more than we're doing right now.
Any
Does that
thoughts
answer your
of
question?
using? Yeah, it does. Yeah. Any thoughts of using allies to having some of those conversations with senior VP folks as well?
That is an excellent
that's a great question.
Yes.
That's great. And we've talked about it several times, and we actually want to utilize allies because, as we've been indicating, there's not enough of us to go around to be mentors. So we do want to. We have had some discussions around some folks who are really strong allies, and that they could be paired up with an LGBTQ person. We're kind of just starting to talk about that, if the truth be told. So we need to explore that a little bit more, and we really just want to find the right allies who are really on board with it. But we do have, I think, at least a handful of people come to mind right away here at Lilly who could fit that bill. So the answer is yes.
And often the ally is someone who has been through the mentoring process already. So one of the requirements that we talked about was that if we were going to have someone who was identified as an ally who was going to be a mentor, that they first off be paired with someone who is LGBT, so we didn't have two allies mentoring another ally. And then we also talked about having that ally have been someone who already has gone through the mentoring program so that they understand it from both sides of the spectrum.
Great. And in terms of how big is the ERG, and has this helped membership, or you were saying people were stepping up and wanting to be involved, has that helped with the ERG, and about how big is it?
We also had an ally recruitment effort as well, which really drove the numbers up. But, we're just, every company is always reorganizing, and we're kind of going through a reorganization right now, so we're kind of in a little bit of a state of flux in terms of the whole ally question. So reverse mentoring definitely is getting the word out about Field Pride, and where we have, because of Out and Equal, kudos to Out and Equal, and gamification, and really kind of figuring out how we can get allies involved but engaged, because allies just aren't happy getting an email once a quarter. They say, I want to be an ally and I want to do something. So we're kind of in the process right now. We have a committee working on, we get the allies, what can we do to have them feel more engaged? So we have a couple of things going on right now, if that answers the question. So one, we're trying to get more allies, but we want to get them actively engaged. We have a committee looking at how do we get them actively engaged. Reverse mentoring is kind of spreading the word out there that, yes, there is a Field Pride employee resource group, and they're doing reverse mentoring, and, maybe I can get involved in that. So it's all interrelated.
Great. We have a couple
and
more.
To answer your I was just to say, to answer your question about sort of the size of our ERG, right now we're around 100 people, but that includes allies, and it's been in flux because we're going through some reorganization. So we've had when we started, it was grassroots, and we've had as many as 150. But I would say in general, there's about 100 people on our mailing list, if you want to get a feel for our size. But a lot of those people on the mailing list are identified as allies.
Excellent. And there's a few more questions left, but we are coming up on the end of the session. So I want to give everybody a chance to make some closing comments. So why don't I kind of go in reverse order there. And Pam, any last thoughts or messages you wanted to leave with the group?
I would just say thank you so much for the time today and all of you joining. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And don't take it lightly, as I know many of us don't. Have those conversations, any kind of one-on-one conversations, even with leaders or with peers and colleagues, goes a long way. And so take those opportunities that you get, help others have confidence, and just have the right conversations to make a difference.
Great. Lee?
Thank you.
Yeah, also thank you very much, everybody, for getting on the call. And I would echo some of what Pam said, too. Get involved and start a program if you don't have one yet. It'll open eyes like you wouldn't believe across the organization, and it will be good for all the LGBT employees in your organization as well.
Thanks, Lee. Jeff?
I would say always keep learning. I'm constantly learning from my coworkers, and really be your authentic self at work, because the more you can strive to be your true authentic self at work and lead by example there, the more as you start to work with, whether it be formal or informal, as you start to work with your coworkers and help them understand your own personal experience, you can learn from them and they can learn from you, and it can make your organization a better place. We've seen that it's become a great place. Lilly is a great place to work for gay and lesbian employees, and that's partly in response to all the work that my fantastic colleagues and we've all done together with this program.
Thanks, Jeff. Michaela?
I would encourage folks listening to try and start their own reverse mentoring where you work, because there's still lots of work to do, and the more reverse mentoring initiatives that are out there at all the organizations and companies, the better off we all are. And I would say with very little financial investment, this program really returns huge benefits. And it's a win-win for us employees because we can be real and our true selves at work. We build stronger teams, and let's face it, stronger teams are more productive, more effective, and the company benefits as well. So let's encourage each other to expand the reverse mentoring initiatives.
And I want to thank all 4 of you for being on the call. The questions that we didn't get to, what we usually do is we send them to our webinar presenters, and we ask them to answer those and put those out in our blog. So kind of watch for those answers, and we want to thank all of you for participating. This is just a sample of the kind of workshops that you see at the summit, and you can join us in Philadelphia October 9th through 12th this year, and come check out what we'll bring you next year. There will be a survey at the end of the call, so please complete that. And our next virtual summit will be next Tuesday, LGBTQ marketing, what makes us different, what makes us the same. And again, if you have questions about training or any other details, please reach out to us, and please give us your feedback. Thanks so much for joining us today.